Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending where you're joining from today. My name is Belén Gallego, and I'm going to be your moderator today. I am part of the ATA Insights and the RENMA team, so I welcome you today to this session. In this session, we are looking closely at whether European hydrogen leadership programs and incentives are working as intended. As you know, very often, actually, it happens quite often that we'll come with a set of regulations and solutions that should incentivize the market the way that we need it, make it good, like incentivize the right kind of actions that we want to see. However, sometimes there are unintended consequences that kind of open up in these rules, and then we start kind of getting the results that we weren't looking for. And here's what we are analyzing today. What are those programs? How are they working? Are they working as intended? How could they be improved? These are the basic things that we're going to be looking at today. So don't worry, you're not going to listen from me today. We have three top expert panelists today who are going to give you each their take. And we're pretty lucky here today that we're going to get the point of view, a little bit of the market, from a consultancy, then a point of view of a developer, and we're also going to get the point of view of a manufacturer, which is, I think, in the case of hydrogen, one of the key points that we're trying to incentivize, which is the sort of local manufacturing side of things, where we create the supply chain all at short proximity. So these are some of the things that we're going to be looking into. So before I actually tell you how it's going to work today, I'd like to ask our panelists to introduce themselves. So please, can I start and ask Maite, please, to introduce yourself so that people can get to know you a bit better?
Thank you, Belén, for sure. I'm Maite Garcia. I'm Head of Energy and Sustainability Programs at Zabala Innovation. For those of you who don't know Zabala, we are a consultancy firm with more than 35 years of experience. We help our partners to submit proposals for public funding at different levels, for sure European level, but also national and regional level. And thanks for the invitation once again.
Thank you very much, Maite. Next, I'd like you to meet José Manuel. Please, if you could introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for the invitation. Thanks for all of you that are in the audience to see our opinion on the hydrogen funding lately. So I am José Manuel Pérez. I am the Director of Regulation and Government Affairs of the Hydrogen Business Unit at EDP. And I've been, EDP is a company that is a renewable developer, but lately we have been active in for instance, in the storage market and also in the hydrogen market, as we see this as a natural extension of our classic big businesses of wind and solar. So let's hope this is a fruitful panel today.
I am sure it will be. Thank you very much, José Manuel. And last but not least, Imanol, please, if you can introduce yourself.
Yes, hello. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the invitation to this new webinar of RENMA. I'm also happy to comment the point of view of OEM electrolyzer technological provider like Nel. We are one of the leading companies in the electrolyzers based in Europe, and we can also share our point of view. I am the director of Nel for South Europe, European markets, and happy to join this webinar.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Imanol. Okay, so we are actually organizing in the context of RENMA logistics. You can see the details up here. They actually, I think 12th, 13th. No, this is incorrect. I actually put the wrong one up. I'm so sorry. So the event is actually RENMA Logistics, and it's in October. However, essentially, we're going to do a lot more of this, so don't worry. We'll send you information about the event, and we're actually focusing on storage and transmission in this event. But I would like you to do, before we start this, please, the people in the audience, can you introduce yourselves? Just use the chat and introduce your name, your company, and where you're joining from today, so that we can get an idea of who is in there. If you are in YouTube, we are actually going back and forth. So for the people in YouTube, we're going to have, and the people in Zoom, actually, we're going to have three presentations, starting with Maite, then José Manuel, and then Imanol. And then we're going to answer questions from you guys. So I'm going to ask you to send the questions, please, through the Q&A box at the bottom, okay? Send them through there. And introduce yourselves through the chat for now. And so that we're recording this session, and we're going to send you the recordings and the materials thereafter, okay? If you're in YouTube, You can still send questions, just put them in the chat, and our team will put them in here so that we can ask them. So without further ado, Maite, please, if you could share your screen, and let's start with your presentation. The presentations are going to be short, about 10 minutes or so, and have time at the end for questions and answers. And well done. I'd like to see this. Please introduce yourselves, because it's going to be for us very interesting to see who's in the room and who's there, and perhaps even, respond to any specific questions there might be. So Maite, go right ahead.
Okay, do you all see my screen? I suppose
yes,
you do.
We see your screen. Perfect. And we can hear you perfectly. So go right ahead.
Thank you. So first of all, a little hint of where are we, what regulation it's upon all these grant incentives. My presentation is going to be focused on the subsidies way. I'm going to analyze main calls that give grants to the deployment of green hydrogen. And why do we need to have these goals? Because Europe has set an ambitious goal for 2050, which is a complete decarbonization of the continent. And renewable hydrogen is seen as one of the key factors that is going to help us to achieve these goals. Especially, it will be interesting in those sectors hard to abate emissions, where direct electrification is challenging, like, for instance, industry and transport. Several rules and legislation has been published, starting with Repower EU, which was the European answer to the dependence of us Europeans with the fossil fuels from Russia. Repower EU encouraged us to develop the renewable hydrogen market and also biomethane market. Afterwards, we have also the Net Zero Industry Act, which is focused on having facilities, having factories here in Europe in order to be to have our own powerful industry of components made for the energy transitions, and also the Fit for 55 package that was published in 2021 and has ambitious goals for decarbonization and so on. So from these legislations arise the necessity of achieving or publishing calls for funding. But before we go in deep to the calls, I would like to share some numbers with you. If we had to answer in a yes or no if calls are effective, well, I would say definitely yes. This is from our internal, from our tool, Kaila. You can search for data figures about any type of calls of sectors. And if we introduce for renewable energy, for instance, in the last 5 years, more than 270 calls have been launched, and more than 700 projects have been funded along all these instruments. Participated more than 3,500 organizations, innovators. You can have the figures there of budget per year that is going to be put into the table for developing hydrogen. Different funding programs, not only Innovation Fund, but AIDS 2020, Horizon Europe, and so on. The projects that are being ongoing by year, and places, you can see it all around Europe where these projects are being developed. If we put the focus on electrolyzers, not manufacturing, but also developing the technology that is behind the electrolyzers, while the calls are less for sure, but we have near 60 calls published and nearly 100 projects has been funded for electrolyzers. So yes, calls are necessary, calls are doing well for the sector, but what do we need now is to bring the gap between knowledge, which has been already funded, and deployment. There's a financial gap, and for sure we need to go ahead, to jump in and turn this knowledge into reality. And then there is, when arise different calls, I'm going to talk about Innovation Fund and CEF calls, which have the aim to fund this gap and to bring projects into reality. First of all, perhaps at this moment, the most well-known call is the European Hydrogen Bank, which results from the first call were published just 15 days ago. And well, I'm not going to go deep into the results. I think we can talk it later if you want. Just here to highlight what we have seen on the first call, on the first pilot, and what we do expect to be the next one. So for sure, we have the focus on renewable hydrogen. It must be renewable hydrogen according to the Energy Directive and its delegated acts. The electrolyzer has to be at least 5 megawatts. And what is intended to be here in this first pilot was not mandatory, but perhaps for next one there may be introduced some changes. How do we integrate the origin of the components of precisely of the electrolyzer in the requirements of the call? As we've seen in the results, nearly half of the applicants stated that they were willing to use European technology. So we have to somehow introduce this clause in the bid in order to make our market grow. No, we can't subsidize or others' technology if we have invested long time ago on developing our own technology. So that will be one thing to be seen, we suppose, in the next calls. Dedicated budget of hydrogen, we see here dedicated budget for maritime transport. All sectors are included, but for maritime transport, there's a specific budget, so there will be more chances to get funded if you have this off-taker. According to the times that we've seen, entry into operation will be will get down to 3 years, and also the maximum bid price to €3.5 kilo. Which we don't expect it to be a burden for the submission of the projects. And also, they are expecting to increase the bond up to 10%. What is behind all of this? We expect to be more mature projects and more close to the reality. And at the same time, this will be real competition, a total budget of more than €2,000 million. So we expect more and more projects to be funded. Just some slide, the second slide is very famous results. Just to highlight one thing, as here from the origin of the electrolyzers, most of the proposals were set to use a European Union origin electrolyzer. So let's cross our fingers. Let's hope this is real and this is true for the good of the sector. Moving forward, we have the Innovation Fund, which was the first really with a significant budget call that funds ready-to-market projects. Here, the requirement was that it has to be, or you have to have an innovative project, but also with the scope put on reducing the greenhouse emissions gases. Okay, that's mandatory. That is linked to the capex to the grant you are going to obtain, and all projects must focus their goals into decarbonization. Hydrogen, as we've talked before, is one of the most thematic priorities, and most of the projects that have been funded are around hydrogen. We'll see it later. And here, you must submit a mature project. They are going to evaluate your technical maturity, financial and operational levels. At the financial levels, you have to build up a strong business model. You have to know very in detail your capex costs, your operations all along the life of the project, and the revenues you are expecting. So our advice is we should have start working on very advanced of these projects, looking for the off-takers, looking for the procurement of the equipment and the administrative issues. It's quite complicated to submit a good proposal for this call. What type of projects are funded here? Well, first group of general decarbonization, usually led by off-takers, by industry. And here we see industries such as chemical, glass, ceramic, hydrogen, but also other topics are granted, like carbon capture or renewable energy or energy storage. The second type of projects are manufacturing. Europe must help manufacturers to build their factories here in Europe. And so here is the main call where we can apply for grants at European levels, and manufacturing of components. And they are quite listed, which are renewable energy assets, energy storage systems, heat pumps, and electrolyzers and fuel cells as well. The third type of projects are pilots, crazy ideas, very innovative ideas that will lead in a future to a complete decarbonization. Okay. Just to your knowledge, some results of Innovation Fund, of the different calls that have been already published. More than 65 in the large scale projects have been funded, and 19 out of the 65 were related to hydrogen, and 4 of them to help build facilities of electrolyzers or fuel cells. In the smaller scale, we see 6 projects related to hydrogen. Moving away from Innovation Fund, we have the Connecting Europe Facility Transport CEF, the program, and we are going to put our focus on the transport projects, alternative fuels call. Here, the aim of the Commission is to finance the building of the infrastructure for transport. So in the previous year, most of the projects have been focused on electromobility, but now we see a lot of expectation about hydrogen and refueling infrastructure. Here, innovation is not a requirement. It's a capex call, capex center. It grants you the installation of the infrastructure and also what they call synergetic calls. What are synergetic calls? They are all needed to make this infrastructure run. For instance, part of the electrolyzer, for instance, the grid connection, or the renewable energy system that has to be linked to the refueling infrastructure. It's important to take in mind that once the infrastructure is put into place, it must be under working for at least five years. Okay. And what type of transport they fund? Well, road transport for recharging stations for heavy and light vehicles. It has to be open access and it must be in the TEN-T network or 10 kilometers away. If you are the owner of a public transport fleet, then you can apply just the refueling station for yourself, but you have to be in an urban node. You have to prove that you are an operator of public transport. Also, maritime will be funded, not only fueled by hydrogen, but also by ammonia and methanol. Here, it's important that eligible costs are not only the refueling stations, but also the works that you have to do in the vessels or in the infrastructure to get adapted to work with this type of fuels, of hydrogen and its derivatives. And also projects related to airport ground operations or recharging of hydrogen trains will be subsidized under this call. So if you are looking for a call for transport, for mobility, this is the best call you can apply at this moment. Finally, a little bit about CEF Energy. CEF Energy is the main program for connecting infrastructure. In this call, we've seen the appearance of the hydrogen networks for construction pipelines, storage, and so on, and also for big electrolyzers up to 50 megawatts. They must have a network function. They have to help to the grid stability. Here, the funding goes from 50%, but not everyone can apply at this moment to the call. Only those who are listed in the first PCI PMI union list can apply. The next list will be done along forthcoming years. To end my presentation, there's much more than Innovation Fund and CEF. European has a lot of programs to help you to submit your proposal, your idea. Please take always in mind, for instance, European Defence Fund, Horizon Europe, or Interreg, that are very also challenging programs, but with a good luck, with a good rate of finance. And just to end next calls and deadlines of those calls that I've been talking about. The auction is expected to close at the beginning of 2024 to be launched by the end of this year, but finishing in 2025. Innovation Fund next call, more or less like this year, March, April 2025. CEF AFIF, the one for transport in September this year, the one for energy in October. From our Kaila instrument, our Kaila tool, you can see that there are other calls related to hydrogen, for instance, the EDF or Defense Fund or the Just Transition Mechanism, or Cascade funding even that will be open and in the short term. Also, if you have the QR to go to our tool, and then you may look for information in detail about each of these calls. And this was all from my part. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Maite. What a complex tapestry of programs. And I suppose if you are in the know, you can probably, make a lot more and find ways, to make it work. It's really incredible. I think I had only ever seen like a very narrow bit of what's available. So thank you for clarifying and for opening up a little bit.
Because there are always the best known calls, but there are a fully landscape of calls, and the problem is to look for the one specifically for your project.
It's a full-time job, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so now next, José Manuel, please, if you can share your screen and start with your presentation. You're being kind of shy so far, but we'll take the time at the end to ask the questions that you've been sending. And for the person who's asking, yes, we will share the presentations and also the recordings in case you want to watch it again or you want to share it with colleagues. So can you put that in large screen, José Manuel?
Yes, I've already did it, but perhaps
Yeah,
it's
now.
slow.
Now, it always takes a few seconds, but you're ready now, so go right ahead.
Okay, so starting. Well, after Maite's presentation, I would like to give you the vision of a developer like us, like EDP Renewables, that we are interested in entering into the business of the renewable hydrogen. Hydrogen is not our natural field, so we are aiming at making projects to supply to other kind of industries, like ammonia, fertilizers, steel, cement, refineries. When we developers look into the fundamentals of the market, so to analyze if we should enter this new business or not, we look at a couple of things. So first of all, we are sure that there is going to be a market. So if we want to comply with the ambitious decarbonization goals and also with other strategic goals, like increase the penetration of renewables, increase the independence from fossil fuels and from certain countries that I don't want to mention, that were the classic suppliers of energy to Europe. And if we want to strengthen the energy market, and if we want to produce energy in a sustainable way, so hydrogen is the way. So many studies see in their projections that it is needed that hydrogen is going to be used in the final sector by 2050 if we want to comply with the environmental goals and the Paris Agreement and so on. But we don't know how fast is going to be this path. So hydrogen is the goal, and we're going to get to it, but we don't know how fast it's going to be. Second thing that we look into is hydrogen really decarbonizing? How to test if hydrogen is really good for the purpose for decarbonization. So there is an important rule that is this delegated act on hydrogen that many of you maybe are already aware of it, with the strange rules regarding geographical correlation and temporal correlation that seems to be kind of arbitrary rules. But in fact, these are very useful rules, because otherwise the hydrogen that you will produce coming from electrolytic origin cannot be guaranteed that this hydrogen really decarbonizes. You have to look at the life cycle emissions of the hydrogen, And if you don't comply with these strange rules, there is a chance that you produce hydrogen using natural gas or coal that are transformed to electricity and then transformed to hydrogen. And this process is extremely polluting. So these strange rules have to be complied, and the incentives and subsidies for hydrogen, at least in Europe and in the US, they are in their way of approving the final rules. Have to be very careful about these rules to make sure that we are not doing things wrong and we are decarbonizing producing hydrogen. So, taking into account that it is difficult to produce the hydrogen, we have a funding gap, so we need incentives, and there are two kinds of incentives to make hydrogen today until it's profitable, perhaps in the next decade. We don't know. But if you want to start with a business today, there are two kinds of policies that the regulators are putting into place. So I will classify them into carrots or sticks. Carrots is like direct incentives and subsidies, or even some kind of regulatory incentives like exemptions in certain coasts, like the grid coasts, or because the grid it is needed to produce hydrogen. Electricity is needed, and through the electricity grid, it's not only renewable energy comes, but also policy charges, grid charges, and so on. So if you are receptive of these codes, of course, you are incentivizing producing hydrogen. And there are other kind of incentives that are the sticks. That is the main tool that they are using in Europe. So they are creating obligation of using the hydrogen. And this is the first thing that we are looking like developers of if there is going to be demand or not. If Europe is doing things right or not, creating these sticks. So in this next slide, so we have ambitious goal in Europe. So the target is increasing every year practically. So a couple of years ago, we had a target in Europe of 5 million tons of hydrogen, renewable hydrogen produced and used in Europe. And then the REPowerEU came and the targets were multiplied by 4. But the main tool to achieve these goals, which is the Renewable Energy Directive that establishes a target for the use of renewable hydrogen in the industry sector and the transport sector, well, it goes in the right way, but it's not ambitious enough to meet these goals. According to our own estimates, with these targets, we will only reach perhaps if they are complied. That is something that we have to see if they are going to be complied or not. In our estimates, perhaps the realistic scenario is of 4 million tons, around 4 million tons of renewable hydrogen in the EU, and to my opinion, perhaps is even ambitious enough. So let's see if we can even comply with this. There are other instruments, more detailed instruments dedicated to maritime or aviation that are useful as well to send a sign to the developers like us to produce hydrogen. So we are looking carefully into this. And there are, as Maite mentioned, several funding instruments, and everybody's paying attention to the hydrogen bank, like it's like the star of the funding instruments in this moment for hydrogen. But there are other instruments that perhaps are less well known, like the Innovation Fund, as Maite mentioned, that we see that it's an interesting tool, and it has to keep on being an interesting tool for making hydrogen in perhaps sectors that are not so competitive. Where Innovation Fund doesn't look if your project is really competitive or not. I mean, this is a part of the criteria they use to analyze your project, but they look also into other things like the innovation and the decarbonization that it produces. So in fact, it's a really interesting tool. We are looking also very carefully into the H2 Global. That was a tool that was launched initially by the German government, but apparently it is going to be like the tool, like the future tool to incentivize imports of hydrogen for all of Europe. So let's see how it develops. So I'm sure that all of you have already seen the results of the Hydrogen Bank. This couple of final slides I will dedicate to give you, my opinion and my impression about the results of the Hydrogen Bank. So all of you probably have seen that the results have been very competitive. a very, very low premium for producing renewable hydrogen and supply it into the sectors that are going to use it. Well, I think that the instrument is really the nice, the good step to follow. But to my opinion, perhaps it should be fine-tuned because perhaps the results that we are seeing, at least EDP, is, well, it's not what we really expected. For instance, it is very good in this mechanism that you can finance in one single mechanism the CapEx and the OpEx at the same time, so covering all the funding gap of your projects in one tool, which is like new. I mean, there are few mechanisms and few budgeted mechanisms so far that could allow you to subsidize at the same time CapEx and OpEx, and covering at the same time all of your funding gap. The most similar thing was the Innovation Fund, but the Innovation Fund will only cover up to 60% of your relevant costs. So this time, a hydrogen bank is a very positive tool. But it is positive, of course, that it is a level playing field mechanism that is reserved for mature projects, that it's only made so far for hydrogen that is compliant with the correlation and the additionality rules that we have already mentioned before. But there are a few things that should be improved. So first of all, and very clear, is the budget of the mechanism. The pilot action was very low budgeted. It is expected that in this year a new action comes with more funds, but perhaps we lack a bit of visibility of what is going to happen in the coming years. So for us developers to establish our planning on how to fund our projects, it will be very good to have like a roadmap of how and when will be the future calls to design our strategies. And there is another thing that perhaps is not well covered, at least in the auction that took place, that is how you are going to prove that the projects have not already decided to take FID. I mean, if those projects that were awarded were so competitive, it's perhaps because they have already decided to go ahead without the subsidies. And then appears the bank like an opportunity to add some extra money and some extra revenues to your business case. But in fact, with these low results of the auction, it is strange, at least to me, that if the funding gap it is only 0.3 or 0.4 euros per kilogram, well, perhaps there should be more projects taking FID already without grants, because I mean the funding gap is very, very low. So it is strange that number of projects have already taken the decision without any grant at all, because only for this very low premium, perhaps it's not enough to go ahead into a decision of investment. And there is another thing that should be solved, to my point of view, in future auctions, which is the problem of accumulation. So to have a competitive and level playing field auction, the authorities, CINEA, decided that this bank should not allow to participate projects that have previous grants. And also, once you are awarded, you cannot have other grants at all. Well, to my point of view, this is something to be solved. I don't know exactly how, because if you participate here with a project that has already been there, like participating in EPCI or Innovation Fund or national calls, it means that if you're participating in the bank, you have to start over again, and you are losing a lot of time. Mature projects that have been developed for a couple of years already, perhaps, are forbidden to participate here. So if you want to be here, you have to start again, or you perhaps have to design second phases of a previous project. And to me, perhaps is a way of losing time. Europe cannot allow themselves to lose time in this track of being the first continent in having this new industry. And perhaps this auction, this hydrogen bank, it should be a tool that will incentivize to participate mature projects, projects that perhaps had already a track record. So making sure that we do not lose time in developing. So perhaps I will stop here. I had this final slide with some reflections on how the potential changes of the future auctions. But perhaps we can leave this debate for the questions, for the Q&A. So,
thank you very much, José Manuel. I think we're all thinking what you're thinking with the auction. I think we'll have to maybe discuss it somewhat later. And it's like one wonders, right, whether the amazingly optimistic results are a good or a bad sign. I think we all expected that this was going to give us guidance as to how to proceed, but perhaps we're a little bit like less. We know less sometimes than we knew before. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the hydrogen bank on the second time round, you know, how they recalibrate for the second. So, all right, next, Imanol, the point of view of the manufacturing. And then at the end of Imanol's presentation, just want to remind you all that we're going to be using your questions. So far, I only have to open. I do have some questions of my own, so don't worry. It's not like we'll be falling down a cliff. But do send them, you can consider them. And Imanol, go right ahead.
Yes, hello. Very good presentations to the previous one, and also a very good view from the top level, from the European level, and also the promoter and an important developer as CDP. So now another point of view is from a technological equipment provider and a European industrial provider of electrolyzers, and how we look also this interesting and growing market, no? So in the next slide, what I will introduce in the next one is NEL. In NEL, we are a technological company, European, based in Norway, and also we are specialized from many years ago in the technology of electrolyzers. This is our core product and our core business from many decades, from the last century. And now with the growing market of renewables and also the clean energy needs in Europe, this sector is totally changing, no? So as you can see in the next slide, so what we are doing as industrial technological provider to this sector, no? What is needed is to go, the projects will go to larger scale, and that is what Europe needs. Europe needs and has a high ambition, no, of the 20 million tons of green hydrogen by 2030, and that has to be deployed. But also all the industrial supply chain has to be prepared to support and achieve these ambition targets. And that is what we are doing. We are doing from at different levels. So we are developing designs and standardizing designs of a large-scale electrolyzer plants in one side. And also we are developing and improving the technologies in order to, with two main targets, is to provide more competitiveness to the clients, promoters, and the sector in order to reduce the cost of the construction of and supply of one electrolyzer plant. And on the other side, we also are working to improve the efficiency, the energy consumption. That is the key point in order to achieve a competitive and efficient project and business model for this type of plants. In our company, we have the two main technologies in our sector, is the alkaline technology and the proton exchange membrane technology. We have both. We are one of the few companies that have both the technologies, and it depends the project, the client needs, then we can discuss one or the other, but it's always the final decision comes from the promoter, the developer, which is the best option for each project. In these technologies, we have different platforms in different size, no? That can be from 20 megawatt, but also hundreds of megawatts, because the projects are becoming more and more bigger. So these are the two technologies that we are offering to the market to support the European ambition targets. And in the next slide, also What is the main use? Because we provide electrolyzer projects, but are different market segments. There are multiple applications of green hydrogen, but the hydrogen is not itself the final objective. The final objective is what is the need of the project and the client. And the application is in multiple sectors. That is what makes the hydrogen to be very interesting, because it can connect the energy, the gas, and also the industrial applications. We are working in different projects, in different applications for sustainable aviation fuels, for green ammonia, fertilizer has an important application. Steel, we have already provided projects to the steel market, and this is also an ambition to decarbonize and reduce the emissions of CO2. Also in chemical and energy and in mobility, there are other applications, and also some type of dynamic hydrogen plants that can be combined with renewable energy feed, wind, solar. That is where our main markets are located and where our clients are having the focus, in this sector. So in the next slide, also we will comment what is NEL doing. We are growing. We are growing not only in the capacity, so we have a strategy to be bigger in order to have more resources and also more production capacity with new robot and automated factories. Also, we have another action plan to be better. It means that we need to continue. We have the technology. Our technology is proven, is effective, and is reliable. But we are continuously working in order to improve and innovate new solutions to reduce cost and reduce the energy consumption. That is also what we are doing in our technological roadmap. And finally, also, we have to be focused because the market, our market, is growing so quickly that we cannot attend only, our company, we cannot attend only a large-scale project. It's necessary an ecosystem of partner companies that work together in order to optimize and reduce the risk for a plant execution in the size of hundreds of megawatts. That is why we are focusing our efforts in the core technology package, that is the equipment that produce the stacks that produce the green hydrogen, but also it's necessary a combination of partnerships with the engineering integrators, EPC companies, with the clients, in order to work together to optimize the final solution. This is our vision, what we are doing, and in the next slides, I can comment regarding the capacity in order to attain the ambitious European targets to produce green hydrogen. So we are growing. So the industrial suppliers and technological providers like NEL, we are growing in capacity. We are doing our homework, but also we are cautious because we cannot invest more and more in more factories if the market is not yet coming with real projects in large scale. Projects are coming. We are executing projects, but are needed more in order also to optimize the industrialization of our solutions and in order to have the learning curve necessary to reduce the cost. So this year, we are finishing one new line of our factory in Norway. And also we will have in the next slide, I will show you that our factories are a reality, are not PowerPoint. We are building these factories. And by mid this year, we'll have finished the second line and with a real production capacity of 1 gigawatt per year in alkaline technology. We are doing the same in PEM technology, where we have an investment up to 500 megawatt, but also we have plans to grow and to create new factories in gigawatt scale. And that is what we are doing currently. This is from the production point of view, and also from the innovation point of view and technology innovation. In the next slide, what we are doing is developing new solutions. Our current technologies are valid for projects that are being launched into the market in these years. But also thinking in the mid and long term, we are developing new innovations in order to have a second generation of technologies that can support our client needs and also the European and the European governments and European Union ambitions. So we are developing a second generation of alkaline technologies and also second generation of PEM technologies. in order to provide also easier installation, more competitive and more efficient solutions. That is what we are doing, but also is needed time. We cannot improve, as you remember, everybody can remember in the renewal, in the wind turbine or in the solar turbine, it was necessary to go through a learning curve of years in order to have the matureness and the competitiveness that they are in that sector today. No, we are following the same route, and we are committed to provide these solutions. Also to comment that in Europe, we have an important leadership in this technology. We cannot underestimate, and also we have to protect our industry in Europe, because we have more than the 60% of the technological companies in the world are in Europe. And also we have a leading technology that has been developed during many years. Having said that, it's important that in order to keep on investing in technologies, factories, employment, the industrial supply chain, it's also needed not a support from the European Union and the different clients. We are not asking subsidies, no. We are asking also to be in fair competition with other competitors, with other geographies, no. But what we are doing is everything what is in our hands. Invest in new technologies, invest in new products, in order to have better solutions, in order that the clients can have a better business model and a better cost of hydrogen. In the next slide, what we are doing is not only developing the new technologies, is standardizing all the designs that we have for large scale. It's a 100 megawatt, 200 megawatt. Even there could be also multiple in large scale, 800 megawatt that could be applied for sectors like steel or petrochemical, chemical, fertilizer, that they need a large scale production plants. So we are doing also this work in order to reduce the risk to the project execution and standardizing our design solutions with our products and our electrolyzers. In the next slide, also to comment, I have mentioned the alkaline new innovations, but also in PEM, what we are doing. We have some development ongoing for the second generation of PEM stacks. And in the next slide, and also finally, in the last point, what we are doing as a technological provider is specializing in our core technology and what we do best. That is the core equipment of the electrolyzer plants. That is where the electrolysis happens in the electrolyzer stacks. We are focusing, as you can see in the next slide, also, we are focusing in the core of this plant. This is an ecosystem, so it's necessary this combination of partnership between different stakeholders in order to provide the total solution to the total plant, no? And that is where also we are working. Mainly our key core market is Europe, but also there are also demand in other geographies, in North America, in Australia, in Chile, in other countries. But so finally, as also in the next slide, just to finish my presentation, a summary, what we are doing is we are committed to improve the technologies and the supply chain of this market. We are investing in new factories, in new solutions, and we have the experience and also the knowledge in order to provide successful execution projects. And also at the same time that the ambition and the needs of Europe are in large scale, we can comment that in large scale also the complexity is increased and also is needed competence, no, and experience in order to reduce the risk of this high investment. And this is where NEL can support this sector and this market and our clients. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Imanol. If you don't mind, okay, if I can just ask you one of the questions that were sent through here. Obviously, good news, you know, that Maite also mentioned that most of the electrolyzers in the European were European. I'm not really sure we're going to see that rosy universe everywhere. In other countries, I think we're going to see a lot more external competition, let's say. But one of the questions was, what is the kind of like the largest technology used, or like the technology that is more used in Europe? Is it PEM or alkaline? And it was asked about European projects. Do you happen to know more or less what percentage of alkaline versus PEM do you get requested, or are you working towards?
Yeah, in our case, our vision, in our vision is that there is a trend as of today, because also the situation can change in the future, in 3 or 5 years, no? But our vision, the clients are selecting more alkaline technology for large-scale projects. That is a decision that is taking the clients, even in our case that we have both and we are promoting both. But because the risk for a project to be launched to the market in the short, mid-term, the risk is lower with the alkaline technology. It's also more efficient, more competitive, less dependency of strengths and special materials that can suppose a risk in the long term. But this is the trend that we see today in large-scale projects. I don't have with me now the exact percentage, but it depends on the scale of the electrolyzer plant.
So generally more alkaline than PEM. So in the case of PEM, you mentioned the risk of PEM is a little bit higher. I mean, it's one of the questions here. I mean, I want to rephrase it because it's not quite how I want to ask it. But are you a higher technological risk if you pick PEM over alkaline?
It's not a technological risk. It's also that the construction, the equipment, the components of the PEM technology as of today, they have special materials, iridium, platinum. So it's a higher exposure in the supply chain. But the technology is also valid. So the PEM technologies, we have a very important, one of the most important PEM projects in Europe is supplied with NEL in Spain for fertilizer application. But the question is not that. Is when a client wants to invest in a 100 of megawatt project, also if they want to be financed by financing institutions and banks, in due diligence, the technology more proven, more mature as of today is the alkaline. That supposes a less risky approach. But having said that, the PEM technology is also valid and is being developing also very quickly. But in large-scale projects, preference as of today of clients are more for alkaline.
Okay, so we've gone through this. I just wanted to clarify because there was a few follow-up questions, and I just thought to get them out of the way. But what I wanted to ask you guys is whether, in your opinion, and there is only 4 possible solutions, so 4 possible answers, okay? Do incentives and programs work as intended? The answers are yes, mostly yes, no, mostly no. So you're going to have to pick one, because otherwise we're going to spend 20 minutes, explaining why yes or why no. So what is your answer? Are the incentives and programs working? Yes, mostly yes, no, mostly no. Who wants to begin? Go on, Maite. You might as well.
Okay. Mostly yes. I think that's the answer, in my opinion, because it's not a full yes. We've seen projects that will be withdrawn from the competition, but it's true that if these calls don't exist, none of these projects will come to reality. So my answer is mostly yes. Yeah.
I mean, but it was the program, the one that imagined this European hydrogen future. Now the question is whether they can actually incentivize enough to get there. So, José
perhaps
Manuel,
they should be fixed for future calls. We are all training and learning.
more transparency, right? Yeah.
Okay, go ahead,
Okay.
José Manuel.
Yeah, José Manuel, what's your thinking?
I will say my answer is not yet.
Damn it, you had to pick a 5th answer. So is it mostly no or no? Is it not yet? So what would you like to see then for them to work?
We are in the right way with a tool like the Hydrogen Bank, but it has to be better funded. It has to have fine-tuned rules to avoid strange results. But as long as we are following this path, yes.
So in other words, you're a little disappointed with how we've seen in the round one, but you're hoping that it's
round
cleaned up for
one,
round two.
I found that round one was promising, but in fact, we have several comments to the rules that we sent to the European Commission. But of course, they didn't took our opinion, and now we are seeing the results that are a little strange.
I wish I knew. I'm the You know, the way I
Yes,
see it though, if I'm doing a purchasing of something, right, and I order, I ask for several like proposals, I always go middle of the pack. I never go at the very cheapest one or the very most expensive one, right? You go middle of the pack. You're thinking, okay, these guys kind of know what they're talking about. But in auctions, it's nothing like that. It's like always the cheapest. I'm not saying it's better or worse. It's just like quite interesting how, you know, you take a procurement decision in a company normally, because you wouldn't necessarily go for the cheapest. You'd be like, there's something wrong here. But we do this all the time in auctions. So just think it's interesting. Imanol, what about your manufacturing point of view?
So I agree with José Manuel. I have the same opinion. It's not yet. No, I will not say so negative. No,
it wasn't even an option.
Yeah, that's cheating.
What the hell?
I'm the only who goes
I mentioned
to the
that.
rules.
I mentioned that because I refer to a fact. If you see all the projects that have been awarded with funds and have been selected by the European Union, different mechanisms and governments, how many of that projects are in execution? And this is one point. So that has to be improved because also the clients, the project has to be supported in an effective way in order to enter in operation, no, or to be in execution. So this is one point. And the second point, also from our point of view, the industrial supply chain is the target is promising. Europe has an important strategy, not only for energy autonomy, the clean tech, the hydrogen can play an important role in the energy mix. So the mechanisms are good, but also has to be well deployed, well oriented, with a special mechanism to protect also the European technology and the European supply chain. There must be something else than only price criteria. And this is that in all of our hydrogen associations we are applying is non-price criteria. We are not asking for subsidies. We know how to compete and also we know how to win projects. But Europe has the advantage to have this technology of fertilizer and has to protect it. It is not only a short-term ambition to have projects, it's for the long term. We have the knowledge, we have the current supply chain organization. This has to be protected with non-price criteria. That is, there is something else. These plants, CapEx is important, but the OpEx and the companies supporting the clients during many years of operation, for me, is also very critical. And companies, and companies has to be still there in operation in many years to support this way to the clients. No, so the answer is we need to be intelligent how to protect and to create this market growth. No.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, it's a complete different thing, isn't it? It's like the whole industrial side and manufacturing is difficult. I mean, we see what the US is doing, and this is my next question, and I think the last one because we're at the end of the time. Is the US doing the right thing with the IRA? Do you think that that's a better mechanism? Because it's kind of like I think they're trying to try to dig a hole, but they're doing it with like a bulldozer, and maybe the hole they don't need is not that big. Maybe I think there is going to be a lot of cheap hydrogen in Mexico, maybe in the future, but I don't know whether that's the right way. So maybe José Manuel, you can give us your thoughts whether the US is doing it better.
Well, I will say also not yet, for different reasons. In this case, they have a very attractive mechanism, very clear, but the devil is in the details. So far, the US has not defined yet what are the rules to consider a hydrogen industry clean.
Yeah, I mean,
and that is a big uncertainty in this moment. But the good thing is that the mechanism there is proper funded, that there are other mechanisms in parallel that aids can be accumulated. So very positive things in the design of the federal mechanisms. There are also state bills that are being defined in the several states that will support as well hydrogen, and that can be cumulated with the other mechanisms. So it seems like a good ecosystem, but it is lacking a lot of details yet.
Anything to add in here, guys? No? Well,
Yeah.
Well,
you know what?
yes,
Go on,
to
Maite.
remark that perhaps this makes this IRA force Europeans to be more competitive and to react. I mean, without this, lots of goals will not appear, and now we have the opportunity to fight against this act. So, well, it's not all negative.
No, I mean, I think at least if clean hydrogen is defined the way it is in the EU, you know, a very similar way, then I think that open doors for everyone. However, there are a few tricky bits in there. Like whenever I dig a little bit more deeper into why in the US it might not be a good idea, they actually had really good points, you know, of why, you know, like time correlation may not be as because they do not have the decarbonized like grid side that we did. If you're decarbonizing, you can use electricity from the grid. They don't have that, so there's a few bits in there that make a lot of sense. But I think let's see how things are. I think I'm looking forward to actually once the first auction of the hydrogen banks closed and the second auction is launched, I'm looking forward to speaking to you again. And for my 2 cents is I think if we're thinking of hydrogen for transport at this point, I think we're taking the good steps because there hydrogen can be competitive a lot earlier, perhaps, than it can in many other areas. So I think seeing that get a little bit more concrete, I think it's giving me a little bit of hope that, you know, we'll be moving in the right direction. So thank you very much, Maite. Thank you very much, José Manuel. Thank you very much, Imanol. It's wonderful to speak to you always. And you guys on the other side, thank you for being there today. As you know, we have an event in October. I told you about logistics. We also have this event, which turns out it says 2025. So it's in March in 2025. I hope you guys come and we discuss. This is Remar Hidrógeno, the biggest event. And without further ado, sign up for our webinars. We'll have a lot more on this and we'll follow up, including we have a webinar coming up just on the auctions and what they mean, the results from the auctions. So do sign up and we'll get into a bit more detail about this. Thank you very much. Thank you. See you later.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Bye.